Welcome in to NBA Now by Chat Sports. I'm your host, Chase Senior. Coming up on today's show with the NBA trade deadline tomorrow, we're breaking down and dissecting all of the latest NBA trade rumors. But first, shout out to today's sponsor, Fetch Rewards, for making today's show possible. Free download, and if you go to chatsports.com/fetch and enter the promo code CHAT, you get 3,000 bonus points. With the Fetch Rewards app, you're able to scan your receipts no matter where you make a purchase. You get points back for all of those receipts that you do scan, and over time, as those bonus points rack up like a LeBron James triple-double, you'll be able to get free gift cards to places like Amazon, Starbucks, Target, and Fanatics. So really the biggest storyline in the NBA right now, it's this potential trade between the Philadelphia 76ers and the Brooklyn Nets. About a month ago, it looked as though this deal was going to be impossible, but as we get closer and closer to the NBA trade deadline, it's looking more and more like it's going to ring true. This coming from Brian Windhorst this morning, and of course, all of this information is so fluid. There were so many reports out there, a plethora of them, so we're doing our best to bring you the most up-to-date information live here on Chat Sports. But Brian Windhorst this morning said this: the teams are absolutely engaged in trade discussions. I know there are people saying things on the record, acting like that's not happening, but it is absolutely happening. There's definitive motivation from both sides to make this deal fall into place. As for the asking prices for Philadelphia and the stubborn negotiator that is Daryl Morey, as well as Sean Marks, who heads basketball operations for the Brooklyn Nets, a bunch of conflicting reports out there. Of course, Brooklyn gave up so much to bring in James Harden a year ago in that three-team trade between the Nets, the Rockets, and the Cleveland Cavaliers, so they won a lot back for the disgruntled James Harden. And the Philadelphia 76ers are in the mix in the East, in play for that #1 seed. They don't want to deplete their roster in order to bring James Harden in. So this report coming from Jordan Schultz covers the NFL as well as the NBA. According to league sources, the Nets have asked the Sixers for both Matisse Thybulle and Tyrese Maxey to be included in a potential James Harden-Ben Simmons trade. Brooklyn has also tangible interest in sharpshooting guard Seth Curry, a career 44% three-point shooter whose development over time has been straight up fabulous. Now, on top of that, the Brooklyn Nets, according to some of these rumors and reports out there, would also like Matisse Thybulle. Now, if you throw in Thybulle, Curry, Simmons, maybe a Danny Green and some picks, and you're able to hold on to Tyrese Maxey, a quickly ascending second-year guard out of Kentucky, I'd think about the deal if I'm Philadelphia. If I have to include Tyrese Maxey, that's way too much to mortgage for James Harden, whose play this year is declining and can opt out of his contract and become a free agent this offseason because he did not sign that contract extension during the offseason, which should have raised red flags for Brooklyn back then. Now, the conflicting reports, it's actually pretty hilarious. So Brian Windhorst had that report earlier, and he even said in that report, I know that there are people out there who are saying this isn't going to happen. So he's firm in his reporting. Adrian Wojnarowski is as well, because he said this afternoon. Right now, there's no negotiation going on between Philadelphia and Brooklyn. The idea that they are going back and forth, that's been surmised by some, I don't believe that to be accurate. So you have a standoff not between Woj and Shams, who are with opposite companies. You have a standoff between Woj and Brian Windhorst, both employed by ESPN. We're riding the seesaw. Who's going to win the battle? And can we get a celebrity boxing match between Woj and Brian Windhorst? If it happens, I'm here for it. According to additional reporting, why is James Harden unhappy? Well, he's really had to put the offense on his shoulders the last 2 years because KD has been injured so much. But we know that Kyrie Irving is a pretty wobbly person. You never know what his next move is going to be. At times last year, he just didn't show up for games without an explanation to head coach Steve Nash. And this year, because of his vaccination status, which I really don't care about, he hasn't been able to play any home games. And according to Brian Windhorst, the relationship between Harden and Kyrie has crumbled, it has vanished, and it is no longer. So for James Harden, was unhappy in Houston, forced his way out. Looks to be unhappy with the Brooklyn Nets as they've lost 9 games in a row. He could be dealt right down I-95 South to Philadelphia. So considering all of this, Do you think a deal is going to happen between two of these Eastern Conference rivals in the Philadelphia 76ers as well as the Brooklyn Nets? We love hearing from all of our viewers, so get into the comment section right now and let me know. Type Y for yes, type N for no, sound off in the comment section, and get that thing popping. As for what Brooklyn gave up for James Harden and why they might be forced into trading him away, considering he can opt out of his contract this summer, neglect to sign a long-term deal with the Nets, and then they would get nothing back for him in that instance. Jarrett Allen, Karis LeVert, Taurean Prince, a 2021 first-round pick swap, a first-round pick in 2022, a first-round pick swap in 2023, another first-rounder in 2024, a 2025 first-round pick swap, and a 2026 first-round pick swap, in addition to a 2027 first-round pick swap. So if you're Brooklyn, you're like, we gave all of that up for James Harden, we won one playoff series, and now we might not get anything back for him. So in that case, is the leverage with Philadelphia and Daryl Morey potentially only a few hours until we find out what exactly comes to fruition? Now, are Embiid and James Harden going to be future teammates? Again, we'll figure it out here over the next several hours and the next day or so, as we're about 24 hours away from the NBA trade deadline as we record this live. But the two-man game between James Harden and Joel Embiid would be lethal. I understand that Harden's numbers have gone down really all across the board. Points per game, his field goal percentage, as well as his three-point percentage. But could his game get elevated playing alongside Joel Embiid, who in my opinion is the NBA MVP this year, and could he be rejuvenated and energized by a change of scenery? Obviously, Daryl Morey has James Harden as the apple of his eye. He traded for Harden when he was running basketball operations with Houston, nearly dealt for him last year at the NBA trade deadline, and has probably tampered, even though tampering happens all across the NBA all year round, to try and land Harden this year. The two-man game between Embiid and Harden, if Harden is able to return to that MVP-like self, which he really put forward last year when KD was out, would make Philadelphia serious contenders in the Eastern Conference. And as far as Brooklyn goes, I actually think if you get Ben Simmons back, he'd be a phenomenal fit alongside Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. And who knows, Kyrie might be able to play if these vaccination laws change in New York City. But you think about Ben Simmons' game. Everybody wants to tarnish his trade value. His trade value is actually pretty high, in my opinion, especially for a team like the Brooklyn Nets. Chase, you're crazy. He's a three-time All-Star. He's 6'10", has phenomenal size, has great court vision, moves and passes the ball like a Magic Johnson. He's a two-time All-NBA player. Last year, he was runner-up for Defensive Player of the Year. I thought he should have won that award ahead of Rudy Gobert because Gobert is always stuck in cement on the low block, whereas Ben Simmons can guard all five positions. And when you look at Ben Simmons, aside from KD and Kyrie Irving, he neglects to shoot. He's afraid to shoot, but with Brooklyn, he wouldn't have to shoot. When Kyrie is either off the floor or not playing, Ben Simmons can play point guard. When Kyrie is on the floor, you can put him in that dunker spot. He can be a screen and roller. Late in games, if he's a liability because he doesn't shoot, he can hang around that dunker spot, catch lobs, catch alley-oops, be a rebounder, and a great passer down low. And he wouldn't have to really put forward much offensively next to the best player in the NBA, in my opinion, when healthy, in Kevin Durant and the tremendously skilled Kyrie Irving. So if you were trading for one of these players, who would you rather bring in? Who would you rather have to build your squad? Type BS for Ben Simmons, JH for James Harden. Another opportunity for you to be as much a part of the show as I am as the host. Get those votes in the comment section right now. James Harden, Joel Embiid, they put up a lot of points any single night. And with the Fetch Rewards app, you can rack up bonus points by simply scanning your receipts regardless of where you make a purchase, and those points then over time lead to you getting redeemable gift cards to places like Amazon, Walmart, Target, Fanatics. You pull up the Fetch Rewards app, by downloading at chatsports.com/fetch. And as you can see with this video example to my right, you hit that orange icon, you scan your receipts, and you get points back for every receipt that you take a picture of. Now, if you have an iPhone, an Android, it doesn't matter. It's a free app. You just have to plug in that link down below, chatsports.com/fetch. And when you enter the promo code CHAT, you get 3,000 bonus points automatically, so you'll be well on your way to getting your own free gift cards. Turn your receipts into free gift cards today by downloading Fetch Rewards. I'll put that link in the comment section as well as the description of this video. More NBA trade rumors and overall rumors to get to, and we'll run through a lot of these things quickly. We have an NBA trade tracker to get to on today's show as well. Is Damian Lillard going to stay in Portland long term? He was involved in these trade discussions so long ago last year and for a little bit of this year, but out really probably for the rest of the year with that abdominal injury, especially with how bad Portland is. And the Trailblazers, with new front office members and executives, did trade away his backcourt member in CJ McCollum. Here was that trade that went down on Tuesday. Pelicans receive Larry Nance, Tony Snell, as well as CJ McCollum. The Trailblazers received Josh Hart, Didi Louzada, Tomas Satoransky, and Alexander Walker. Now, that trade then was pivoted into something completely different, where the Jazz got Alexander Walker, as well as Hernangomez. The Spurs received Tomas Satoransky and a second-round pick, and the Trailblazers received Joe Ingles on his expiring contract. He's out for the rest of the year with that torn ACL, Elijah Hughes, and a second-round pick. So right now what Portland is doing with the new general manager, they're clearing a bunch of cap space, they're rebuilding the roster, they're taking on expiring contracts in a method that OKC has kind of made popular with the hopes of surrounding Damian Lillard once he's healthy with a better roster to make another run at a playoff stint. Dame on staying in Portland, looks as though that's going to be the case. Is it going to cost him a ring? I think so. Dame staying in the Pacific Northwest. Quote, "For me, my heart is as a Portland Trailblazer. I want to win it. I know that I have a plan that's going to put me on my best level when I come back to play, and I want our team to fit that." As for the New Orleans Pelicans, by bringing in CJ McCollum, it makes them a pretty interesting team. Obviously, this is all done because they want to convince Zion Williamson to stay. I think that's a lost cause. I don't think Zion is going to stay long-term in NOLA, but by bringing in CJ McCollum, you bring in one of the best sharpshooters at the two-guard spot in the NBA, and a guy who any given night can give you 20, 25 points. You pair him up alongside Zion once he comes back healthy, if that ever happens, as well as Brandon Ingram and a couple of other pieces on that roster. It makes NOLA somewhat interesting. They got off to a disastrous, and I mean disastrous start this year. They've gotten better since then, though. 10th place on the cusp of making it into the NBA play-in tournament. They want to get into the playoffs for the first time in a long time to convince Zion to stay long-term. As for Dame, let's pivot back to him. Anytime he crosses half court, he's a threat to put the biscuit in the basket. But I want to see the best players in the NBA go to destinations where they can compete for championships, where they can take advantage of their marketability and their image. And for Dame, his loyalty to Portland at the end of the day could cost him a ring. Now, he's still going to go down as one of the best scoring guards that we've ever seen. Him alongside Steph Curry changed the way that the game is played, but he deserves a ring. Hasn't gotten an MVP. That's missing from his mantle as well, but the big one missing is an NBA championship. And I just don't see how free agents are going to be lured to the Pacific Northwest to play alongside a ball-dominant guard who's getting older and is now injured in Dame, but man, he's a spectacular talent. With that trade, a lot of moving parts with it. I like CJ going to NOLA. Feel bad for him. He's going from one mediocre organization to another. But who won the trade? NOP for the Pelicans, POR for the Portland Trailblazers. Once again, you get your votes into the comment section and let me know who won that deal. And another reminder, we'll be going live for our NBA trade deadline coverage right here on Chat Sports tomorrow. More trades to get to. This one blew my mind. Sacramento continues to do Sacramento things. What the hell is that organization doing? How do you give away Tyrese Halliburton? Among some of the young players in the NBA, he's one of the trade assets I would make untouchable. He's one of those guys who I wouldn't trade away. First 2 years, he's been fabulous. And for him to team up with Rick Carlisle, fabulous. Is Buddy Hield going to get dealt? Conflicting reports as to whether or not he's being floated around in trade discussions once again. Tristan Thompson, more of a salary cap dumper, going to Indiana. And then the Kings receive Domantas Sabonis, who is a back-to-back all-star player, Jeremy Lamb, Justin Holiday, and a 2023 second-round pick. But let's focus in on Sacramento. I mean, they passed on Luka Doncic, and they drafted Marvin Bagley, who has been bad for that franchise. They finally got a pick right with Tyrese Halliburton, and I think he's the better player long-term than De'Aaron Fox, who the Kings, I think, mistakenly gave that contract to, which has become untradeable. And Tyrese Halliburton the last couple of weeks and this year is really, really ascending as one of the best young point guards in the league, a building block who you can build around, and you trade him away to Indiana, where he's going to be able to be coached by Rick Carlisle, a former point guard, and one of the best coaches in the NBA, especially when it comes to developing talent, and Tyrese Halliburton going to be able to streamline that development under a very good coach in Rick Carlisle. Now you're looking at a backcourt with Haliburton, as well as Chris Duarte, and some of the young pieces on that roster. Is Malcolm Brogdon going to be back after next year? Probably not, but you're moving forward with Haliburton and Chris Duarte at the very least. That right there, couple of good young building blocks, kind of reminds me what the Cavaliers did a year ago, and now one of the best teams in the East. As for what Haliburton has done this year, 14 points per, 7.5 dimes. Check this out. Shooting almost 46% from the field and 41% from three. Now we know that the Kings are a dumpster fire of an organization. They haven't made it to the playoffs since the early 2000s when they were paced by Chris Webber, Mike Bibby, Peja Stojakovic, and the boys. No players really want to stay in Sacramento because that organization continues to fail. Haliburton actually wanted to stay in Sacktown, and they still traded him away. He was so upset, he started to cry. How about this quote coming from Matt Barnes, who played with the Kings in his NBA career? This was a gut punch to the team, this trade. I've talked to sources close to the team. The team was in shock, devastated. Tyrese was in tears. This is something he had bought into, not only as he was emerging on the court as a potential star, but also emerging as a team leader on a voiceless team. So I think this one shocked everyone in the trade. This is not downgrading who we're getting in return, but this was definitely an emotional day for Kings fans, the coaching staff, and the players. Honestly, if I'm a Sacramento fan, if I didn't give up on this organization already, I'd think long and hard about it now. You're moving forward with De'Aaron Fox, who's a nice player, and Domantas Sabonis, who's also a very good player, as I talked about, back-to-back All-Star games. But you give up one of the best young pieces in the NBA at the point guard spot in Tyrese Haliburton, a guy who wanted to be there, who is a voice on a voiceless team, and you ship him out? Doesn't make sense at all. As I've talked about on today's show, myself, Harrison Grant, we're going to be going live for our NBA trade deadline coverage tomorrow, Thursday. It all starts at 1 o'clock Eastern, 10 o'clock Pacific. Make sure you subscribe and join us right here on Chat Sports for the most watched NBA trade deadline coverage here on YouTube.